Good Monday evening to you, and thanks for joining us tonight on UpNorthLive Unscripted at 6:30. We are kicking off the work week for some of us with some showers and even a little storm. And I know, Joe, you've been getting a lot of pictures of pretty significant hail across northern Michigan from today.
Yeah, in some cases covering the ground.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it hasn't been that large, dime-sized in a couple spots. But yeah, we did have some hail with a few of these thunderstorms. There's still, for some counties, technically a severe thunderstorm watch, so we'll take a look at that. But once these storms kind of wind down tonight, looks like a pretty decent day tomorrow. I think the other thing, and you mentioned this to me, it looks a little cool this week overall. You know, it's not going to be snowing out, but we will see somewhat of a cooler temperature regime coming in. So we'll look at that and what to expect for the rest of the week and show you a few of those hail pictures coming up a little later.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Joe. Our top story tonight takes us to Lake County, where a correctional facility is set to reopen after closing in 2022. The owners of North Lake and Weber Township, they announced in March that they entered a federal contract with ICE. Geo Group owns the 1,800-bed facility and plans to use it as an immigration processing center, but they haven't said exactly when they plan on opening just yet. Our Allie Baxter spoke with the county sheriff, who said that they really don't know any more than what the public knows.
They get one contract and they're open and then they close.
That's been the process of the North Lake Correctional Facility in Lake County for years. The privately owned prison has held juveniles and high security inmates from out of state. But no matter who comes through here,
at the end of the day, you never know how long they're going to be here.
That's because owner Geo Group operates with state and federal contracts. Their latest is with ICE. It's been said the goal since the prison opened was to bring jobs to Lake County residents.
We want to be able to provide those opportunities for the people that work, live, and visit here. But it would be nice to have something that we could definitely count on all the time as well.
Since long-term employment at the prison isn't reliable, Sheriff Martin says it may deter people from applying there.
They had their wave, what has been explained to me, that they'd hire everybody from Lake County, but be that it may, it's not always that way. I think at one point, the last contract, I think just like a third of the individuals that were employed at the facility didn't live in Lake County.
We feel that these jobs are not good jobs. We feel that they are not likely to be the kind that would sustain a community.
John Dispelder is with Traverse Indivisible. It's one of the organizations sharing information about an upcoming protest of the prison on June 21st.
This is a national concern, and it's a Midwestern concern too. This ICE detention facility in Baldwin will be the largest detention facility in the Midwest.
Dispelder says with the prison's proximity to the Grand Rapids and Traverse City areas, he's concerned it will lead to more ICE activity in northern Michigan.
We're going to be potentially hubs for moving ICE detainees, and that means, that there will be more ICE employees, ICE agents in one or the other of these areas.
In Lake County, Allie Baxter, UpNorthLive News.
And we did reach out to Geo Group today to try to get an update on when they plan on opening. A representative said he couldn't comment and instead just resent us the same news release from March. Let's take a look at our question of the day related to that story. It is, do you support the opening of an ICE processing center in Lake County? As of right now, it's pretty split between yes or no. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. We have 258 votes. We also have almost 200 comments over on our Facebook page. So if you'd like to join in the conversation, make sure you vote and head over to Facebook to leave a comment. We'll take a look at the results toward the end of our show. But moving over to Grand Traverse County, the Northwest Michigan Coalition on Homelessness is asking for $1 million in Traverse City's next budget. It would be for a permanent supportive housing fund. Now, the request will be discussed by city commissioners at a study session tonight. Our Cody Bear is there getting ready for that meeting, set to start in less than a half hour, and he is joining us live now from probably, still outside the governmental center there in Traverse City. And Cody, what else can you tell us about this discussion happening at the meeting tonight?
Yeah, so the big ask here is about ways to kind of bridge the gap. And that's where this money is going to, is ways to bridge the gap to getting permanent housing. We've talked with the coalition a few times before, and their biggest thing when they come to this meeting and they talk, a lot of it's about the the cure to homelessness is housing, is what they say. And that's where a lot of the money is going to, or they want it to go to. And we'll have specifics tonight at 11 from their presentation. But we know that this coalition, a lot of that money that they want is to go to finding ways to bridge that gap to provide permanent housing rather than short-term solutions.
So do we know what some of those ways are that they plan on bridging that gap?
Some of it, and per their agenda, and I saw a little bit of the presentation, so a slight sneak peek to 11. Some of it is utilizing current unused housing spots, and some of it is incentivizing landlords to make this more possible. And how specifically they'll get into those, that's something that they'll kind of explain in this presentation, and how the money helps to get there is something that they'll explain tonight. And I'll have more on that at 11, but some of those kind of things are what they say will help bridge that gap.
And this is just a study session, so we know commissioners won't actually be voting on anything tonight. They'll just be discussing it, hearing that presentation. Yes. Do we know then what the next steps are after tonight's meeting?
So a lot of it depends on kind of where this goes. I believe the next step will be eventually there has to be a vote, right? So eventually the next steps will continue to kind of go through the line to where the city commission does have a vote where it's up there for a lot of people to maybe know about it and have more public comment on it, even though that is available tonight. So there are a couple steps left, but eventually it has to go to a city commission vote. Mm-hmm. That just won't be tonight. It'll be in an actual city commission meeting rather than the study session.
And you mentioned a few of the different initiatives that the coalition is looking into to bridge the gap. And when you're looking at the amount of money that they're asking for, $1 million. At first, you're like, oh, $1 million, that's a lot of money. But when you think about what that money is going towards, such a big issue of trying to end homelessness and trying to provide more affordable housing, $1 million really isn't a whole lot. So do you know specifically more like on how they plan to use that money?
Well, I don't have a ton, at least right now, because I haven't seen the presentation in full. But once they give that tonight, I will have more on 11 on, the specific ways that they can incentivize and maybe use some of this money to incentivize landlords to make housing more accessible for people who need it and that kind of thing. A lot of it were just some of those bullet points like that, and utilizing current housing that's not currently being utilized. Those were, really the spark notes that they gave in the agenda. And tonight they'll really go into that. But the coalition says that 61 people in 2024 were experiencing chronic homelessness. And in our past, with talking to the coalition, a lot of what they have said is a lot of money is going, and a lot of money and resources is going to help those people currently. How can we help them with short-term solutions? The coalition says, can we use some of that money to make long-term solutions? And once those long-term solutions, really do become long-term, that's when they're set in place. And that's when maybe you don't have to spend $1 million. Or if you do, it's helping those people rather than the short-term. The coalition really wants to have that long-term solution. And again, they say that the cure to homelessness, that long-term solution, is housing. So tonight at 11, we'll see more of those ways that money specifically goes towards that.
All right, Cody, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a preview of what people can expect if they are listening into this meeting or even attending this meeting in Traverse City. Again, it is just a study session, so no decisions will be made, but Cody will be there. He'll be listening to that presentation from the coalition, and we'll have a full report tonight on UpNorthLive News at 11. But let's change gears now. A few more stories to share with you before we take a break. The latest numbers suggest the economic impact of the wine industry in Michigan this year will be almost $9 billion. Mark Gillette has much more on the numbers.
We've learned some things after 50 years of planting grapevines in Michigan.
And here at Chateau Chantal, they kind of had to. They were one of the vineyard pioneers here on Old Mission.
We've been growing grapes since 1986.
Over that time, they've produced award-winning wines and witnessed the state's wine industry transform.
We're getting close to the 300 mark in the state for wineries of all kinds.
From mom and pop producers to vineyards that even include lodging, hundreds of locations selling a lot of wine, employing a lot of workers, and becoming an economic driver.
It's almost a $9 billion economic impact that wine has within Michigan.
That number, part of Wine America's new 2025 Wine Economic Impact Study.
I'm so glad to see that the growth is measured from the last report that came out in 2022, I believe. It tells us what we here at the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development already know that this is a growing industry.
You don't get to $9 billion of economic impact simply by wine sales. It's a total of the impact the industry has.
We are talking about jobs in the tasting rooms. We're talking about vineyard jobs. We're talking about induced impacts and direct impacts. When people are coming to wine country to visit their favorite wineries, they are also likely staying in a hotel or doing other activities in the region which do generate economic stimulus.
And it's not just here on Old Mission.
We actually have 5 federally designated wine growing regions in our state.
Vineyards provide wine and jobs and provide a reason for tourists to visit and spend money here at hotels and restaurants and other nearby businesses.
Runs a really large swath of different industries that are impacted by the wine industry itself.
And having the data, the latest numbers to back that up, may be helpful in keeping the industry on its current trajectory, learning from the past 50 years to help shape the next.
These numbers are incredibly important for a few different reasons. One, the businesses might use these numbers when applying for grants. They might use them in calculating local economic data for their regions when they're business planning. These numbers are also important for us having a metric to be able to understand the growth of our wine industry year after year. So there are a lot of ways that we use these numbers.
That was Mark Shillette reporting. And we have some good news to share with you before we take our first break. A new study on the eastern monarch butterfly population shows an increase in its population after nearly 2 decades of a decline. Trevor Robideau reports on what this all means for northern Michigan.
According to the report from the Worldwide Fund, the eastern monarch population surveyed in Mexico doubled from last year with nearly 4.42 acres of inhabited forest, up from last year's 2.2 acres of forest.
Of course, if there's drought, it means that the milkweed that the caterpillars rely on and the nectar plants that the adults rely on are not going to be growing in the abundance that's needed. So with a little bit more rain, a little bit more moisture, what we're seeing is a rebound of some of those plants, which in turn help the population of the adults increase.
According to experts, the long-term population of the monarch population in America, including the western monarch, is very low and has been decreasing for decades.
We would like to see this population, the eastern one, at least covering 6 hectares within the monarch butterfly biosphere reserve while they are overwintering. In the case of the western population, we have even a more clearer indicative of the decline. And unfortunately, this year, it declined again.
Based on numerous studies, scientists believe this is due to the widespread use of pesticides and destruction of monarch habitat, especially in the United States.
We can definitely indicate that the main threats to the monarch butterfly are pesticides, the excessive use of pesticides, climate change, and the fragmentation and loss of habitat.
Balt says further decrease in their numbers has a larger impact.
So I think, there are a number of factors, not just because there are not enough of these butterflies in the landscape doing things like pollinating, for example, but also just because they are less able to defend themselves against unforeseen circumstances.
Experts believe action must be taken soon in order to avoid further population collapse. It starts with providing better living conditions for the monarchs.
North of the border, I think we have a lot of work to do here in the U.S. to reduce both pesticides, particularly in the form of neonicotinoid pesticides that are found on corn and soy pretty ubiquitously across the country, which are impacting monarchs, but also reducing the use of glyphosate, which is one of the leading drivers in terms of depleting that milkweed that the monarchs need for rearing their young.
In northern Michigan, Trevor Robideau, UpNorthLive News.
All right, let's take a quick pause, but coming up next, Joe will have much more on your forecast for the rest of the night, what you can expect, and a look ahead to the rest of the work week as well. All of that straight ahead.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.
A pretty gloomy start to the work week as some rain and thunderstorms rolled in through some areas across northern Michigan. So, Joe, what can we expect the rest of the night? Any more rain or storms in the forecast?
Yeah, there's still a few around, but it was slowly tonight. These will kind of come to an end. And then tomorrow, I mean, the chance for rain is pretty small tomorrow. I think a couple spots maybe get a shower. But the bulk of it is today. And then the next big chance is probably going to be a little later in the week as we head toward Friday. A look right now, though, you can see around northern Michigan, that's the Mackinac Bridge, Mackinac City. A look in Petoskey. A lot of these cameras kind of all look the same. Gaylord, Traverse City as well. Although if you look in the Traverse City camera, there is a little bit of sunshine trying to peek through there. So a little bit of sun trying to poke through. We did have a severe thunderstorm watch for a good portion of the area. We still have that in effect for the pink shaded areas, although the threat for severe weather is really diminishing. Technically, this is in effect until 10 o'clock tonight, but I imagine we'll see a lot of these counties kind of being whittled away from that watch as things start to improve overnight tonight. Let's take a look at why we've had some storms. Here's our weather map tonight. Low pressure kind of situated nearby, a passing cold front as well. And surrounding that, cooler air overhead. So any heating you get at the surface, like when the sun comes out in the morning, the air rises and then you get these showers and thunderstorms that developed. And here's a look at that earlier today. So there's radar. You can see a couple bands of showers and storms passing through. Here's a look across the UP in Straits. Sault Ste. Marie, you just had some heavy rainfall. It's just about to end if you're watching there tonight. Meanwhile, some thunderstorms around the Mayo area. You can see that over toward Alpena with a few of these. I'll turn the lightning on. There you go. You can see some of the lightning strikes with this. Some heavy downpours, but these are not severe. And then down this way, thunderstorms kind of ending. Another little batch of rain coming perhaps on shore around Manistee and Ludington a little later this evening. But this is what it looked like up in Emmett County. This is in Bliss Township off Canby Road. And look at the hail coming down. This is a couple hours ago. Looks like snow. But see on the patio furniture, there are some of the hail. This was taken in Goodhart, courtesy of Biz Bauer, some of the hail on the ground. And then look at here, Tashina Worthington sent this in Cross Village. It looks like snow. It really does. But that was some of the hail we had in spots earlier. All right, let's take a look at the next couple days. Rain starts to taper off. Now, tomorrow, a dry start to the day. However, right there in the UP and maybe around Alpena South, could see a stray shower pop up tomorrow afternoon and evening. That's about it. Maybe a shower Wednesday morning. Then Wednesday afternoon looks dry. And that is pretty much the forecast. Now, looking ahead, the best chance for rain, it looks like for us, will be Friday in the lower peninsula. Rain arrives during the day. The other story this week, it's not going to be cold, but it's also not going to be very warm either. Temperatures mainly in the 60s and 70s Maya going forward, at least through this week. So a little cooler than average.
All righty. Thank you so much, Joe. Well, coming up next, we actually gave our sports director, Harrison Beebe, a week off. He deserves some time off too. But Cody Bear, who we talked to earlier in the show, will be joining us for a recap of all the sports action from the weekend. Straight ahead.
Some action on the golf course in Michigan over the weekend. The boys golf finals wrapped up Saturday. 2 days of play in the finals. Glen Lake's Michael Houdeman finished as the top individual in Division III with a total score of 138. He went for a 70 Friday and a 68 Saturday. McBain Northern Michigan Christian finished in 4th in Division IV with a total of 652. Glen Lake was right behind them in 5th. In Division III, Traverse City St. Francis finished in 2nd with a 639 through the 2 days. David Ansley finished in the top 10 individuals in Division III, just a few strokes back. Traverse City St. Francis had a productive day on the baseball field Saturday. In the Division III regional final from the Region 17, they beat Negaunee 4-3. After that win, the Gladiators went on to grab another win in the quarterfinals, this one in a commanding 10-1 fashion. St. Francis has booked a trip to East Lansing for the Division III state semifinals. They're up to play Thursday at 9 a.m. Softball regionals going on over the weekend as well. Clare and Hillman both won in their regional finals. Now on to the quarterfinals for both of those teams. They'll both play tomorrow. Winners of these games go on to East Lansing for the softball semifinals later in the week. Plenty of action on the diamond over in Detroit as well. Tigers taking on the Cubs over the weekend. The two ball clubs had the best records in the MLB going into the series. Game 3 yesterday, and Jack Flaherty was on all night like a porch light. He held Chicago, who had 5 home runs Saturday, to just 2 hits through 6 innings Sunday. Spencer Torkelson had 2 RBIs in the first inning to get things started. Riley Green brought in 2 more in the 5th, and Detroit gets a shutout to win the series 2-1. They remain in the top spot in the major league with a record of 43-24. Tigers head to Baltimore tomorrow to face the Orioles in a 3-game series. First pitch set for 6:35. The Thunder tied up the series in the NBA Finals last night. OKC grabbed the win in Game 2, 123-107. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the floor at 34 points. It feels like him having a big game is as sure as 10 dimes buying you $1. The Pacers and Thunder now get ready to head to Indiana, where Game 3 will tip off Wednesday at 8:30. All right, that'll do it for sports. Stay with us.
Salon services are furnished by Epiphany Advanced Academy in East Acme.
Taking one final look at our question of the day, do you support the opening of an ice processing center in Lake County? As you can tell, folks are pretty split. We have 288 votes, 53% say yes, 47% say no. Over on Facebook, as I mentioned, about 200 comments. Kevin says, no, look at what's happening at the one in LA. It will bring massive protests, death, and violence to the area. Mike says, yep, anything to speed up the process of getting illegals deported. You can join the conversation by going to our Up North Live Facebook page. We are all out of time here tonight on Unscripted. We want to thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you back here at 11 o'clock.